Hey, welcome. So whether you're cramming for the MLO exam or you're a home buyer just trying to figure out all the numbers, we're going to break down one of the most powerful tools in any real estate deal, seller concessions. Let's get right into how it works.
All right, so picture this. You've done all the hard work, right? You've saved up that down payment, you've found the perfect house, and then boom, you get this list of closing costs. We're talking appraisal fees, title insurance, loan fees. It can add up to thousands of dollars you totally weren't planning on. But what if there was a way to shrink that number?
And that's exactly where seller concessions come into play. The easiest way to think about it, it's like a discount coupon from the seller, but it's only good for paying your closing costs. The seller basically agrees to chip in some money from their end of the sale to help you cover those expenses. It's a fantastic tool for negotiation, but, as you're about to see, there are some pretty strict rules on how much they can help.
Okay, before we dive into all the different loan types and their specific percentages, you need to know the one single rule that comes before everything else. This is the foundation. It's the starting point for every single seller concession calculation you'll ever do.
So, here it is, the golden rule. You always, and I mean always, use the lower of two numbers, the home's official appraised value or the sales price that you and the seller agreed on. So, if the home appraises for less than you offered, you have to use that appraisal value. If it appraises for more, you use the sales price. Get this one step right, and honestly, the rest is easy.
Now that we've got our starting number, the next big question is, what percentage can we actually use? Well, that all depends on the type of loan you're getting. Lenders put these caps in place for a really good reason. It's to make sure the sales price isn't getting artificially pumped up just to cover closing costs. It keeps things honest.
And here's the cheat sheet you'll want to remember. FHA and USDA loans, they're both capped at a pretty generous 6%. VA loans are a little tighter at 4%, and investment properties, well, they're the lowest at just 2%. And then you've got conventional loans. They're the special case with their own set of rules.
And look, this isn't just some random info I'm pulling up. This comes straight out of the MLO Study Buddy Guide. Knowing these percentages is absolutely critical, not just to pass your exam, but for actually putting together a deal that's going to work in the real world. So, what's the story with those conventional loans?
Right, so for conventional loans, it's not just one flat percentage. It's actually a tiered system, and it all comes down to your loan-to-value ratio, or LTV. That's basically just a fancy way of saying how much you're borrowing compared to the home's value. The more you put down, the lower your LTV, and the higher the concession you can get.
Let's look at the first level. If you're putting down less than 10%, which means your LTV is over 90%, the seller can contribute a maximum of 3% towards your closing costs.
Now this next one is the sweet spot for a lot of home buyers. If your down payment is somewhere between 10% and 25%, your LTV falls into this range and you can get up to 6% in seller concessions. That's double the first tier. And for those buyers coming in with a really strong down payment, we're talking 25% or more, your LTV is 75% or less, and that puts you in the top tier, where you can ask for a whopping 9% from the seller. This is a huge advantage when you're negotiating.
Okay, so theory time is over. We've gone through the rules. Now let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. With a couple of examples, this is where it's all going to click.
First up, let's look at borrower B. They're getting a USDA loan on a home with a purchase price of about $222,000. So the big question is, how much can that seller legally chip in to help them out?
Well, with a USDA loan, things are nice and simple. We don't need to worry about LTV or anything like that. We just go back to our chart, and we see the rule for USDA is a straight 6%. And since there's no mention of a different appraisal value, we just use the purchase price.
And the math is super simple. 6% of that purchase price works out to $13,329.54. I mean, think about that. That is a huge amount of cash that borrower B does not have to bring to the closing table.
All right, now for a trickier one. Meet borrower G. They've got a conventional loan. The purchase price is over $551,000. But wait, look at that. The appraisal came in a little lower at an even $550,000. And we know their LTV is 72%. So, what do we do with all that?
This example is perfect because it forces us to use our two most important rules. First, the golden rule, right? We have to use the lower of the sales price or appraised value. So our starting number is $550,000. Second, we look at that LTV. 72% is below 75%, which puts us squarely in that top 9% tier for conventional loans. So we take our correct base number, the $550,000, and we multiply it by our correct percentage, 9%.
and that gives us a maximum possible seller concession of $49,500. See? When you just apply those two simple rules, you get the right answer every single time.
So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. Number one, always remember that golden rule. Start with the lower of the appraisal or the sales price. From there, you just need to know the specific percentage limit for your loan type. And of course, if it's a conventional loan, remember that your LTV is the magic number. You've mastered these points, and you've got an incredibly powerful tool in your back pocket.
And that brings us to a final thought. We know seller concessions can mean a buyer needs less cash to close, and a seller might get a quicker sale at their asking price. But in today's market, who does this tool really help the most? Is it a way for buyers to stay competitive, or is it a strategy that lets sellers hold firm on their price? It's a really interesting question to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.